Welcome to The Moms I Know with Sheila Walsh-Denton and Maria Anderson-Farner. Two moms on a mission to reclaim childhood and take you from surviving to thriving on your parenting journey. The Moms I Know is your go-to source for motivation, inspiration, and resources, and real conversation about motherhood and parenting with intention. Thank you for being a part of our community. We hope you enjoyed this episode.
Do the best you can until you know better. Then, when you know better, do better. Maya Angelou.
Welcome to The Moms I Know. We are so happy to have Lisa Dominguez Abraham with us today. Lisa is a dear friend of mine, and also she's an English professor at Cosumnes River College, a school that has been noted as one of the 10 most diverse community colleges in the nation. She currently serves as the Professional Development Coordinator at CRC, and her poetry collection, Matahari Blows a Kiss, won the 2016 Swan Scythe Chapbook Contest, and her full-length book of poetry, Coyote Logic, came out from Blue Oak Press in 2019. And we are just delighted to have you here with us today, Lisa. This is really a pivotal time for us right now as our country is dealing with so many different issues. We have COVID-19, we have social and racial unrest, and we're at this point of possibility. Sheila and I have been talking about this recently, and so we really appreciate you being here today to share with us many of your views on life, on your work, on your poetry, on parenting, all of these things. And so thank you for being with us today, and that quote is just perfect for our times.
Thank you for having me.
So, Lisa, I would love for you to start with telling us a little bit about your background, how you came to the work that you've done, a little bit also about, your parenting along the way, and give us a little bit of that background.
I began my career as a public high school English teacher in South Sacramento, which, as you heard from the bio, the community college that I work at right now is actually just across the street from the high school where I used to teach. So the community college has been named as one of the 10 most diverse community colleges in the country. That describes the area that I work in, this highly diverse and poor working class area for the most part, and some middle class, but we draw from all kinds of areas. After teaching high school for 5 years, I was fortunate enough to get a job as an English teacher across the street at Cosumnes River College. In the last few years, I was department chair at my college, and in California, English and math at the community colleges has had a paradigm shift. Those two disciplines have had a paradigm shift as a result of Assembly Bill 705, which changed the funding formula for community colleges in the state. And what AB 705 did was, rather than give community colleges money for the number of students they enrolled, they began to say, we're going to give money to colleges based on the number of students who meet their stated goals at the time of enrollment. So we are open access in California. Community colleges accept the top 100% of students. And we are now have the both carrot and stick of saying that everybody needs to be able to succeed in their goals. And I was AB 705 coordinator for Cosumnes River College. I was also the English department chair. That meant that we had to look at our curriculum, and we had to look at our equity gaps, and very closely, because again, we now have to look at the practices that have perpetuated the systemic racial disparities in success. After being AB 705 coordinator and English department chair, I applied for and gained the position of professional development coordinator at the college. And so right now, my job is that I help put the infrastructure into place for the kinds of workshops and activities and speakers that will promote professional growth for faculty, classified professionals, administrators, although most of it has been focused on faculty. So with the advent of the school shutdowns with coronavirus, I would say almost all of us recognized right away that our equity gaps were going to become equity chasms. And that the issues were not simply the kind of issues that could be fixed with laptops and Wi-Fi access, although that's definitely part of it, right? So that became this kind of crucible for us really looking even harder in the last few months at the kind of systemic racism on which academia in our country was founded. And then George Floyd was murdered. And with everything else that's going on right now, all the other murders that are coming to light and that are continuing to happen, this focus has become sharper and more crucial. And so I'll just say that the directive, if you want to put it that way, or the invitation is what I should say, the invitation that we have from the Community College State Chancellor in California, Chancellor Oakley, is that we now need to prioritize honesty over collegiality when it comes to talking about issues of race, if we are going to be effective educators of all of our students.
Wow. So, and this is why we have invited you on today, because I know you are grappling with all of these in such a concrete way. And it's so interesting to me because I've been hearing you talk about your job for years now. I mean, we've known each other for a very long time. And, hearing about things from the lens of the English professor. And all of a sudden, a couple of years ago, the conversations were shifting to looking at this issue of equity at the junior college and the committees that you were on and the language that you were having to speak and the conversations that were coming up that you took on. But I think that now it's just accelerating at this pace that is just mind-blowing. And so, and also along the way, you've been raising your two boys, in Sacramento, in community, and having to balance and juggle all of these aspects. And so I'm, as I'm hearing you talk about this, realizing how overwhelming this can be. And I know that this is such an emotional time for all of us. And yet it's also affecting us in such different ways, depending upon where we are, who we are, how we look, who we're talking to. And so, Sheila is in Santa Cruz, California. I'm in Bozeman, Montana. We have different life circumstances. And so I just want to take this a little bit more into this direction of the conversations that you're having right now with your students, who I think a lot of them either are, we've talked about this in the past, some of them are parents themselves, and some of them are younger people kind of coming into the junior college, and some of them are older people that are going back and getting an education. So can you tell us more about a lot of the conversations that you're having, not just with the faculty, but with the students?
Well, unfortunately, there's two unfortunate things that I have to put on the table before I answer that question. One is I really want to make it clear that I am not an expert in areas of equity, of areas of systemic racism. I am not a novice. I am not a beginner. I'm a little baby. So who you are hearing from right now, it's like you asked a 2-year-old to come lecture about astrophysics to MIT students, graduate MIT students. And that toddler would not be able to say much except maybe star. And I really want to make sure that everybody understands that, I'm talking about it from my perspective, but you're hearing a baby's perspective. And so that's who is speaking. That's unfortunate thing one. Unfortunate thing two is that I haven't been in the classroom for about a year and a half. So the work that I've been doing, classroom work predates coronavirus, and it predates the current social unrest. So I can't say directly what students are saying. I can only do hearsay. And so I will do just a brief hearsay. So where we work, well, first of all, these are students who have not chosen to take online classes. These are teachers who have not chosen to teach online classes, and everybody got slammed into this really fast. And I'm sure everybody's read about the difficulties of, so the coronavirus has disproportionately impacted Indigenous and Black and Latinx populations. And our students are on the front line in their jobs, and so are their parents. So we've had a lot of students who have had to quit school because their parents have lost their job, and so now the student needs to take on more hours to help support the family. We have, many people living in very small spaces, so they don't have a private place in which to do any kind of homework. We have people that there might be one device at home that the whole family has to share. We have students who are trying to take classes on their phone, but they don't have Wi-Fi. So then they would have to drive to maybe a parking lot somewhere where there's free Wi-Fi. We put out, right when this happened, we put out all kinds of things about free Wi-Fi hotspots in Sacramento. But I think also equally importantly, and this is the thing that I couldn't sleep when we went online, because I had a suspicion and I did some research that verified that the online format has the course success rates by ethnicity in the online format is vastly different for Black and Latinx students at top universities who have chosen the online format. So if you have the most prepared students in the country and the most who have demonstrated success within the academic culture, they take an online class and the success rates, there's a disparity in success rates. Now you multiply that by, all these other factors, and this is the result. So I think I might have gone off topic. I don't know what's going on. I mean, that's what I know what's going on from the student's perspective. There are students that are working mightily to stick with their classes, that teachers are working mightily to try to stay in touch with the students. But it's a very difficult time. We do not yet have the data from spring 19, but I think we have a feeling we know what it's going to show us.
Well, this is so fascinating because we've been talking about this whole shift to, distance learning or online classes for, whether it's pre-K or preschool. I mean, and we've heard of families that are, the preschool kids have come home and then their preschool teachers are coming online, which, of course is ridiculous. Let them play, but then all the way up through elementary school, middle school, high school, and now at the junior college level. And these facts that you're sharing with us, we've been aware of this kind of at the back of our mind, but you're bringing it forth in this, way is like just so powerful to hear the inequity that is being now exacerbated. And we're seeing it, across the board, across our country, around the world, where, people in poverty and people of color are so much more exponentially affected by all of these things. And so, when we're all grappling with this together and we're all trying to figure out how to go forward. And so whether it's how we talk about race or how we raise our children or how we are looking at education in the fall, none of us knows how that's going to look. And so, this is just this tiny conversation in this sea of unknowns, but you're shedding light for us on that. When you said the chasm, I'm so struck by that. When you said the divide, but then you said that, we realized this was going to be a chasm for our students.
Well, I just want to say, though, too, to kind of bounce off that chasm thing, coronavirus, going online, the current social unrest, only shine a light on what was always true, what has been true forever and ever. So I think that to try to frame these current crises as the cause would be a mistake. So, and I think that that's one of the things that's where we are, I think, being charged to look now, is at what are the underlying systems that make these current things true, the current pressures more true for some people than others. And so I've been thinking about parenting, and I've been thinking about, because my kids now are in the early 30s, and I am still Monday morning quarterbacking myself on all the things I should have done and didn't do as a parent. And the things that I should have done and haven't done right now as the mom of 2 adult kids. And so, and I'm blessed right now. I've got a granddaughter that just turned 4 months, so we haven't had a lot of discussion about racial inequities in this country with her. But I see that it's coming. Yeah, first things first. But I think that one of the things that parents do, that we do as parents, is that we help our kids find themselves in the world through their relationships, right? What are their relationships? What is our relationship with them as parents? What are their relationships with each other as siblings, as friends? If they are fortunate enough to have pets, what are their relationships with their pets? I know that I have a feeling, just knowing Maria, that a lot of this, that you guys probably talk about, what's our relationship with the natural world? What are we supposed to be doing to be good custodians? And I think that part of what I would like to do more of as a parent is to expand those conversations. And I've had these conversations with my kids anyway, but not in the same way, about what our relationships are with other people who share our country with us. And so that being said, I will remind myself and everyone else that I am speaking. As I am speaking, I am on the land of the Miwaka-Nisenan people who are still in my area. I am the beneficiary of genocide. I am the beneficiary of colonialism. And I occupy a space that does not belong to me because of my privileges. And I think that it's important for us to keep those kinds of things in mind as a way of locating ourselves in the world. And so one of the things that I think is extremely crucial right now is critical self-reflection. And I wonder whether as parents, we try to model, and I suspect that thoughtful people listening try to model for our kids, what does critical self-reflection look like? That's one of the things that we try to do, right? And so we talk, I think, about critical self-reflection when it comes to topics that are easier for us. And so I thought about recycling. What are the impacts of my choices? What are some of the things I do that may not be as convenient for me, but I do to mitigate my impact, my negative impact on the planet? But I think that there is a discomfort. I know there's a discomfort. And now I'm going to enter the uncomfortable zone. I think particularly among white people, about talking about race. And I think that it's important from my perspective, and I think it's so valuable that you have this podcast, because here you have an opportunity to self-identify as white, to start considering what it means to be white in this country. And I think that call is, I know that call is being put out everywhere right now, right? So what does it mean? So it's Robin DiAngelo, who wrote White Fragility. She says, what does it mean for white people to see themselves as a racially socialized group? what does that mean? Now, I think that it's important for parents to start developing their own understanding of what it means to be part of a racially socialized group in order to help socialize their kids. Because if their kids present white, and I don't care what your bloodline is, I didn't want to go into Elizabeth Warren. Okay? I don't care what your bloodline is. It's what is your culture, how do you present to the world? So it's not only how you feel inside, but it's also how other people read you that affects the way we're able to move in the world. So I think that it's really important. And then not only what does it mean to be a racially socialized group, but what does it mean to continue to benefit from racism? And I like Peggy McIntosh, who wrote in 1988, essay Invisible Knapsack. She wrote, I was taught to recognize racism only in individual acts of meanness by members of my group, never in invisible systems conferring unsought racial dominance on my group from birth. So I think that particularly, it's not that anybody's seeking to be mean, but that we are benefiting.
Well, we're having to look at all of these things so deeply these days. And I mean, I said that earlier, that this is an opportunity for change. And we're seeing all of these systems and institutions being, the cracks that have been there, obviously, for decades, for centuries. Now everything is just right in front of us. And you've spoken to that so beautifully and so articulately. And this is the question that we have now of how do we move forth, and how do we talk to ourselves, and how do we talk to our children? And Sheila, I'd love for you to weigh in here also, because I know you've been having these discussions with, and your children are, in the tween and teen ages. And I've been having the conversations, our adult children are right near us here. And so we've been having these conversations, and I've been stunned by some of the things that have come up, and some of the perceptions, and some of the things that, they've said about where they grew up, or how they grew up, or the things that we did talk about or didn't talk about, or what they got from us versus what they got from the community. And I think that's a piece too that we haven't even talked about. But this, if there's a vacuum, if we haven't talked about these things, then they're going to pick up things from society that may not be exactly our view, but that it's this perception out there. And so, Lisa, I really appreciate that you said, we have to do this critical self-examination of how, and I love the way that you said how we perceive ourselves, but also how the world perceives us. And that's something that I think maybe all three of us have grappled with in different ways because of, the color of our skin, or because of where we grew up or when we grew up. And, Lisa, you and I grew up in, basically Berkeley in the 60s and 70s. Sheila, you were in the Bay Area as well, but a decade or so later. And so, it shapes all of us. But, this conversation of, how are you talking with your mid-kid and your teens, Sheila?
It's interesting. I really also, when you said critical self-reflection, that's where I'm at right now. Moved me to tears, just the emotion behind that piece. And I'm thinking of like, not enough, I'm just not doing enough. And it's like, even though I know for myself, I've been doing the work, I've been, red white fragility and me and white supremacy, and really trying to have my children see that I'm doing the work and bringing up conversation and telling them to, I'm giving them sound bites of, look at this video with Trevor Noah. He did a really good, when George Floyd was murdered, and I put that in front of my teenagers, watch this, and to bring it up. But I have an 11-year-old, and I have yet to, talking about it, but not as deeply as I feel like I should be. And I want to definitely listen to this, because you've said so much, Lisa, that really is the work. And when you started this, you said like, I don't want to do this interview. I don't know if that was the words, but like, you know, because this is hard. This is hard right now because I'm feeling like I'm going to be judged and it's like, so what? Judge me for not knowing enough. That's okay. You know, and I just feel like, I mean, Maria and I have I don't say struggled, but we are who we are. I don't have a lot of friends of color. You know, I don't have that. And I want that. I have tried to cultivate that. But where I live in Santa Cruz, I grew up in Marin County. It's just like that. And to take it a step further of my actual background is my dad was a policeman in San Francisco in the 60s and 70s. So who, you know, and that has its whole other piece. Like he was a policeman during the Rodney King riots. I was in high school during the time. I remember those. I have that guilt on me, sort of thing, of just of him being that and how I grew up. And so like I don't know how best to do this with the kids. I'm looking at people. I'm following a lot of people on social media. I'm listening and I'm participating. And I think, you know, I feel like a baby, like you said. Like, you know, it's just, I'm trying.
I'll quote a couple of wise women. Maya Angelou says, do the best you can until you know better. And when you know better, do better. That's what we're talking about, a lifetime journey that we're on. You know, so wishing yourself jumping decades ahead into this work, you know, yes, we all wish that. I certainly wish that. But I think it's super important for us to do it anyway. And then I also wanted to quote a couple of things, although they're out of context, significantly, from you guys' June 11th interview with Catherine Winter-Sellery. Because she was talking about a different topic, but I could only hear it through my lens. And she said, what are the messages the outer world has given you about who you are? We have internalized those messages. So I would ask parents, what are the messages the outer world has given you about who you are? Now, I was raised in what I call the assimilation generation. So even though both of my parents are from cultures and backgrounds that were severely marginalized when they were growing up, unable to enter certain areas, drink from certain fountains, both of them, right? Really brutalized by the police. I was not. And I believe the era in which I was raised, and I think by other people who, like me, are from approximately my generation, the idea was you fit in, you accept and you fit in. Because there wasn't even a suggestion that we question those kinds of things. But part of assimilation means I've also assimilated racist perspectives. I have also assimilated those, you know, you don't get to pick and choose. All of that has entered me. And so I think that brings me to another thing that was brought up in Winter-Sellery's talk, which was one of the things, I don't remember where she said this, but one of the things was, how can I feel better inside? And I don't think that's the question at this moment for us. I know this is hard work. I think anybody who is looking at whatever your experiences have been on the continuum of being the recipient of racist actions and words, and I certainly have. Good Lord. I mean, but I am not Black. And so I have not experienced this to the 1,000th degree that my Black friends and colleagues have. And so I think the other thing that she said, I'll just say one other thing, which I think all of us need to be more conscious of right now, is how the other person is experiencing me matters to me. She was talking about how children are experiencing their parents, right? But what if moving through the world as a person of privilege, even though you have good intentions, you feel like your intentions are good and you want your intentions to be good. And by you, I'm talking about the collective you, I'll say we, right? We want, but how the other person is experiencing us should matter to us. And so a lot of this has to do with, again, that critical self-reflection. And I think that, I'll just say one other thing, which is I've been thinking, I always think about my dad, it was, and continues to be, super interested in optical illusions. And so I think about one of the ones that he has shared with all of us, where you have an optical illusion. It looks like a series of dots or blotches on a page. It just looks like a page with a series of dots and blotches. But then when somebody says, look, it's a couple dancing, then you can see where it is actually, where you can see a man and a woman in waltz posture. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. So every time you look at what seemed to be a diffuse field of blotches and dots, you see dancers now. And I think that's what's happening for those of us who are trying to become more critically self-reflective, is that we want to increase our ability to distinguish in those blots and dots and dashes what relationships are in our interactions with ourselves, with our families, and other things like that. And I think that one thing that parents can do right now is the hard work that you're doing right now, Sheila, which is to, we're going to be clumsy, and we're going to say things that we wish we hadn't said, and we're going to catch ourselves thinking ugly. And, but I think that we can take a step forward. It can't just be people of color doing this work. Nothing will shift. I think we desperately need people who self-identify as white to start doing critical self-reflection and teaching their children about what it means to be a racially socialized group and racially socialized as white, so that our coming generations can be more aware. I still am somewhat cynical about anything lasting coming out of this, frankly, but it's an idea.
Well, we are doing, and you said, interesting, that optical illusion, because Sheila and I always refer to the dance of parenting, but I think it is the dance of being human and living in a world that is imperfect, as we are all seeing so clearly in so many ways. But you also spoke to this, Sheila, you said, trying to do the work within our lifetime, but the reality is this is not the work of just our lifetime. We look back, how many generations have we all been dealing with of persecution? We are all the daughters of immigrants. We are, the granddaughters of immigrants. We are constantly trying to strive as parents to be better. And, so Maya Angelou's quote applies to so many things, but particularly this moment in time where we all have to deepen our awareness. We have to deepen our consciousness around every single choice we made. And, Lisa, you even talked about just the recycling piece. We can apply this lens to everything. And so I so appreciate your insightful perspective on this, and realize it's not just going to be our work. It wasn't just our parents' work, our grandparents, our great-grandparents. It won't be just our children and our grandchildren. This is the human struggle. But we can hope that we can, and I'm going to be always the eternal optimist, we can hope that the change that we're making today can make a difference for our children, for our grandchildren, for all of humanity. Because, we have to strive for the change that we want to see. And yes, it all begins with us. And when we started this podcast, The Moms I Know, it was all around these conscious choices that we make and how every choice that we make affects our children and then generations. So,
well, thank you very much for having me. And I'll just say that I am just grateful for the opportunity in my work to do what I can to aid those who I am taking the lead from and who have a much better sense than I do of what next steps can be. And I guess the challenge for all of us, especially I would really, in around equity and diversity, is to, when we can, bring ourselves back to the harder questions. It's easy to talk about the easier aspects of this, but institutionalized racism is a difficult topic, and to challenge us to continue to return to that when we can, and to challenge ourselves to do that. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. Is there anything else? I know, this is, again, just this little snapshot, but before we wrap up, is there anything else that you would want to share about your work, your journey as a mother, your journey as a poet?
I'll just say that I'm super grateful to talk with you guys. I'm grateful to talk with anybody who helps me try to collect my own thoughts. Talking with you sharpens my ability to think about these issues and sharpens my resolve to be more courageous in my own journey. And super grateful to talk with people who see that we are always learning. We are always trying to get better and to be better humans. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. And if people want to get a hold of you, what is the best way?
You could email me. I have a website that my niece created for me, and my poetry, it's lisadominguezabraham.com. And thanks to a friend, I have a Twitter, which I don't completely understand how to use. I'm trying to get better at it, but it's at Abramama968.
All right. Thank you so much. And we'll have that in our show notes as well. And so, Lisa, thank you so much for being here with us today. We truly appreciate all of your insights and the work that you're doing and just who you are as a human being. I'm so grateful to have you as a friend as well as this colleague today. So thank you, Lisa.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us today for the Moms I Know. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. To get the show notes and resources mentioned in today's episode, visit themomsiknow.com. For information on Maria's programs, visit thefutureoffamily.com. And for information on Sheila's programs, visit purplebeetfamily.com. Don't forget to subscribe and rate us on iTunes and follow us on Instagram at The Moms I Know Podcast. Until next time, have a joyful family journey.